Welcome everyone to the first This Week in World of Warcraft podcast. I have my younger brother, Ollie, with us here. He's been playing WoW almost as long as me. Do you want to just go through a quick introduction?
Yep. My name is Ollie. I go by Albinator in-game. And I've been playing WoW for probably around 6 years now. Started at the start of Legion, but I've been playing like relatively hardcore for more like 4 years. Started taking it really seriously in BFA. And yeah, managed to get a world. I can't remember what we got in pieces, but I rated in pieces last year or 2 tiers ago. We got like world 4th, and that's as high as I've got now.
Yeah, top 5, right? So you were playing in pieces. You've played mostly Boomkin, Hunter, and Mage, right? I would say were your 3 strongest in that order.
Yeah.
Or maybe Mage is higher up now. I don't know. I guess it's
no, Boomkin and Hunter are definitely higher. I might have more time on Mage now, but the class is harder than the other two.
Significantly harder, yeah.
Yeah, I can play the other two better. Like, I barely play my Boomkin at the moment, and I can just log on to it and still like play very well in a weekly key.
Yeah, I think everyone at the high end would say that, right? Like, if you've had that much time in, you just play that 5% better on that staple. So a lot of knowledge in terms of range specs. You currently were raiding with M&M, right? But they've literally just disbanded. So looking for a team, but sort of staple top 10 EU raiding teams is what you'll be moving into. So a lot of knowledge. We're going to be trying to cover just what's happening in this week, but also what's happened in the past week in World of Warcraft, mostly Mythic Plus driven. We play together quite a lot at the minute, although it's actually not that often. It's more like just 8 keys a week, but we are pushing a bit in Mythic Plus. We know what we're doing and keep on top of the news. So that's what we'll be going through. The first thing that we're going to cover then are going to be affixes. So I'm hoping to release these on Wednesdays. I'm not entirely sure when, but this is a little bit late for this week. In the future, it'll be more relevant. But the affixes this week are pretty good. Tyrannical, Rage, and Storming. There's no real time added with the affixes, if that makes sense. It's not like bolstering, which adds time into the key. Sanguine can add time into the key, right? Just because of the fact that you're getting more HP to get through. Rage increases damage. Storming makes it annoying, but it's not like it's stopping damage output or increasing the damage throughput that you have to reach, right? Whereas I think Quaking, for example, does, right? Because it stops casts. So that like reduces the damage that you can do. So they're decent, but they're also frustrating. I don't know if you've got anything to add for those.
Yeah, I think they're both like very minor DPS decreases. Like as a demon hunter, I need to watch out for stormings and that can that can cancel a fell rush cast and put me in the wrong spot. But it's way less than the ones that you said, like Sanguine and what was the other one? Bolstering.
Bolstering as well. Yeah, true. Yeah, I think for you, it makes more. For Rogue, there's almost nothing that I cast. So Storming doesn't. If I get knocked up, I'm still just doing damage, which is kind of nice. But
yeah. It's still very minor though. And also Raging. I don't even know if we've been doing it that much this week, but the tank having a kite obviously means the tank's not hitting the pack and things spread out a little bit more. But
to be fair, I'm sometimes using globals for Soothe inside of CDs, right, which is annoying. So I like drop a Shadow Dance global. I imagine like Druids will be doing the same, Hunters, for example. So there actually is more of an impact in terms of time for Raging than maybe I first gave it credit. But I think if you can manage them, it's okay. And I'd specifically say it's a decent week for Pugs. I think they're better for Pugs than some other weeks. Things like Grievous, it's just basically, can you heal it? So like Tyrannical Grievous, for example, right? Whereas this is better than that.
Yep, agreed. I think this is a lot better for Pugs because Storming is like a personal. It's just on you to not get hit by Stormings at the wrong time, whereas Sanguine is all on the tank. Bursting is like a group effort. Quaking is where everybody else is. So it's just everybody has
bolstering
to do
group-wide effort again. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so premium things, you want to bring in Evoker, right? If you can Pug. Hunters, their stocks are going up this week, right? Same with Boomkin, the stocks are going up. Rogue, not quite as much. It's 25-second cooldown on Shiv, but those are things to watch out for. Specific dungeons, Storming and Raging are ridiculously annoying in Temple. So Storming's just frustrating for Mari, right, first boss, and then You also have raging to deal with on the ads, and some of the hardest trash in the game exists in Temple. It's obviously not a fortified week, but I think that's probably the dungeon that's going to be the worst affected. And then we have written down here tree boss from Algathar. When you want to stack up, watch out for Storm in there. Not good. Last boss, again, there's not much space, and when you're trying to run away from the slam effect, you could get caught by it. Same with dodging the charge effect, right? And then Ruby Life Pools again. Transition phase, sub 50% on the dragon. There's not much space, and you can get knocked up and then just all of a sudden be at 6 stacks and you're just going to die. So those bosses in particular, but like we said before this, really all bosses get affected by storming. You just have to watch out for it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Pretty good week in summary, though, especially if you're pugging. I think it's a good week. Next thing we got tuning. Did you see the tuning for Azure Vault? Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was though. It was the timer got extended a little bit, and then I can't remember what else.
Yeah, exactly. So we had timer going up by 1.5 minutes, which is actually a lot more than it sounds. Right, 1.5 minutes is a big timer increase. And
yeah,
then
it's about 5%, right?
Yeah, exactly, which is pretty big. And then we also have the cooldown on Azure Blade's mana. Sorry, it's the mana is going up, so that the duration between the transition phases is increased to 60 seconds. So it's not that the cooldown's gone to 1 minute, it's just that the mana bar's gone up, but that effectively means it's 1 minute between transitions now, which is actually really good, because now you can just send 1 minute in the transition in terms of both defensives and offensives, right?
Yeah.
And that helps a lot. Generally, it's going to be much easier to push that boss in like 2 or maybe 3 transitions if you're a very high tyrannical week, right? Than it was before. Like that actually adds quite a bit to the complexity of that boss, trying to do transitions every 50 seconds. Like you just the amount of cooldowns you have to send in terms of defensives is a lot higher, I would have said, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely massive, because it's every intermission just adds, like, you know, you could say is a number of flat 30 seconds. I think it might be more than that to the boss.
Yeah.
So missing an intermission is huge, but just extending the time between them, just it makes the boss so much easier. It's just an extra 10 seconds that you get to pump the boss every time, and yeah, like you said, more time for defensives and stuff to come back up as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So, any thoughts on AV getting nerfed? I personally thought it was an okay dungeon. I mean, it's one of our best keys that we've done so far, right? Because I personally feel like if you just send stuff in a relatively good order, that dungeon's actually not too bad.
Yeah. I agree. I don't really think it needed the timer increase. I do think that I really didn't like this boss. The boss that got nerfed, I think, deserved it. I think a nerf like this, or an increase between the time between ads in the normal phase, would have also done it. Like, it feels like we almost constantly killing ads on that fight, which isn't very fun. And yeah,
and until we worked out how to really manage the ads well, i.e. how to move the boss, it was significantly harder, right? And I'd say exactly that. I think the change to Azure Blade and the duration increase between phases, I think that was warranted, but I don't think the timer was. I would have preferred to see a timer increase in something like Temple or Hov. I think those 2 dungeons are worse for timer, to be honest. Azure Vaults basically had some annoying bosses, is what I would have said, right? But like if you do the route that we do, where you just slam all of the frogs and you skip a lot of the really annoying trash, it actually feels pretty good. Like I think you can do that dungeon pretty efficiently.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think many dungeons at the moment really need timer changes. I mean, I think the biggest one that stands out is Shadow Moon. Shadow Moon should get like 5 minutes locked off the timer, but I don't think they want to do that.
No, because that would affect the season ratings, right, and the cutoffs.
Yeah, because the Raider IO and stuff would. Well, I don't know. Would Blizzard do it retroactively, where they would then make it so that you
true.
Completed?
That's a good show. I hadn't really thought about that. If they did, then I think it's warranted, because Shadow Moon's significantly easier. Port of Stars significantly easier, right? To be fair, this is another point I think is very pertinent, is that this is pretty late in the season to be doing this stuff. I feel like we've been going for 3 months now, 12 weeks. So is that how long? maybe not that long. I can't remember, but
No, it's a little over. I think we've been through every affix once, and we're now at week 4 in the cycle again. So
it's just
we've done
14.
14 weeks.
Yeah, so it's a bit more than 13, right? So yeah, it feels like it's come pretty late.
Yeah.
Like it would have been better for them to just like go really hard on dungeon tuning for the first couple of weeks. Right, I think they could have nerfed Shadow Moon in the first 2 weeks. I think they would have been warranted, and that doesn't affect the season's like outcome, like the cutoff ratings or anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think I mean the focus was obviously on tuning classes, but I really hope in this next season that they just nail down dungeons in the first couple of weeks instead, and really, really go hard with it, because that was probably my biggest grievance in the first sort of 6 to 8 weeks, is that some dungeons just felt so bad in comparison to Shadow Moon. So
yeah, I mean, to give Blizzard credit, they've done a lot this season. Like they've done a lot this season, even relative to previous ones. I think this might be the most dungeon tuning that we've had, but it still hasn't been quite enough. Like they definitely could have done more, and it would have been the season and the dungeons would have been better for it.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. That's my biggest negative for this was how slow they've tackled this and how late they're making these changes.
Yeah.
If they make the changes in a more condensed 2 to 4 weeks, I'm going to be much happier come 10.1.
Yeah, agreed.
Sick. All right, so next up, we've got Last Stand. Now, I don't know how much I want to cover MDI and Last Stand in the weekly podcast, like just chit chat. I'm not entirely sure because I don't actually watch it that much. I've watched a little bit of this Last Stand, but I think you're the same, right? Where you don't really watch MDI. I mean, you've competed in it, right? You did pretty well in the time that you did play in it, but you don't watch it either, do you?
No, I don't. I haven't watched MDI a lot, other than I'll watch the big tournaments. I still don't watch them a huge amount. I don't watch them, like I barely play League at the moment, but I still prefer watching League.
I'm exactly the same, yeah.
And games like that. But I will watch MDI when it comes to the MDI finals or whatever, when it's the top teams from all of the cups come together. That's when it gets more interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to do exactly the same. I watched the final weekend basically, so that's the end of this month, right? I'll definitely watch that, and I'll watch the big matches from it. I probably won't watch it all. I kind of like the format of Last Stand though, and the Great Push. Did you watch the Great Push in Shadowlands? I don't know if you.
Yes, not all of it. I didn't sit there and watch through like all of the 6 to 8 hours. No, there were 6 hours, I think.
6 hours, yeah, they are.
I didn't watch all of them. I watched it like when it was coming to a close because I wanted to see if any teams were going to overtake others and that kind of thing. But I did watch some of it.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. If I'm at my computer and I know that it's the Great Push or the Last Stand weekend, I might just put it up, like flash it up and like see how it's going, and then come back at the end, basically. Yeah. I think I like the format more than normal MDI, to be fair, where you've got a bunch of teams going and then they're pitted against each other and they're all trying to do the same keys over a longer period. I just think the viewing's a bit awkward when you've got such long days, like 6 hours playing. I imagine also as a contestant that would be awful. You didn't play in the Last Stand tournament, did you?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, okay. Because imagine being as a player where you've got to play like essentially, what is it, 18 hours of practice on stream over 3 days. I feel like it's a pretty hardcore commitment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. As a competitor though, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it and I would have found the 6 hours fun, but I do think it's more fair and it's a better representation of the teams. So for example, we got knocked out. For the series that we got knocked out in, one of our dungeons was Necrotic Wake, where the first pull is, absolutely massive. You send Lust, you send all CDs, and we bricked our key because our tank died in the first 10 seconds. And that's that key done, and that's effectively the series done because we made a mistake or something like that within 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's that. We're finished at that point. Whereas in this kind of format, you could just go again, you run it back, and those kinds of one-off mistakes and depletes aren't going to cost you an entire series and cost you placing in the tournament. So I think it's better, but you're definitely right. It's way more grueling, and it is quite hard to sit there for 6 hours because it's not just putting in work for 6 hours. It's 6 hours of like intense
concentration,
focus. Brain switched on. You're paying attention to everything. And it would be quite hard, I could imagine.
For sure. And yeah, on the point, so MDI favors consistency, whereas I would say the last stand and great push favors your like peak performance, right? Like your top end. There's a little bit more forgiving in terms of consistency. If you can be bolder, but then you can pull off that top end bold move of pulling like 30 mobs with the first boss, then that's going to pay off, right? That's essentially what happened. So Legendary and Cheese qualified. So that was Lepan's, not Lemike. Lepan is from Fat Shark, yes, I think, right? I think his team qualified, and then Fragnance's team qualified. So those are the two big names from those.
Fragments? I didn't even know he was playing in the MDI.
Yeah. Their team went through. And they basically went through on Temple. They managed to cut out a pull from Temple from the times that I looked at. And they cut out a pull from Ruby. So that's what they qualified on, basically. That's it, right? It's like if you're bold enough to be able to pull that off and actually skillful enough to do it, then you get through. So that's what it favors, right?
Yeah, I think as a viewer, that's way more interesting as well. Not as a competitor, but as a viewer, that's a lot more fun to watch. Is the teams go for these massive, monstrous pulls that they don't know if are going to work out or not.
Yeah.
And you either watch them fail miserably or pull off this absolutely insane,
ridiculous pull. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only times that I really adamantly watched MDI and enjoyed it was the first MDIs in Legion. And that's exactly that it was. I remember the team that won, I think it was the first MDI ever, was Shell's Angels. They won some of their matches with like 20 to 30 deaths because they were just doing monstrous pulls. That
was a Sheen, wasn't it?
Going for. Yeah, that was a Sheen.
That was wiping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your old guild as well. I remember them. Yeah, that was insane. I love that. And you're right. That sort of thing I think is more interesting to watch and is one of the draws to Last Stand in the Great Push style of format. For sure. I think. Although having said that, do you know what it is? The grand finals, then no one's going to be pulling the punches again. You're going to see Echo pulling what they think is their highest risk, highest reward strategies, right? Because when they come up against Munker, it's going to be a matter of seconds in the timer. Like if they can cut a pull from the route, they're doing it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm still going to tune in for the finals because it'll be pretty high octane. But yeah, I feel like the weeks getting up to it, like the group stages, just aren't as interesting as the Great Push format. Basically, I'm more of a fan of it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right. Next thing then on the list, I've got a clip. So Trell, unfortunately, got knocked out. I think Tettles did as well. I think from the Great Push, but I've got a clip here, which is just nuts. I don't know if you've seen this.
I hadn't, but I'd watched it
just for this
because I saw it. Yeah.
This is insane. So if for those of you who are watching, right, there's two detonation seeds that Trell stood in there, and the Evoker healed through the peak 380k HPS, pretty much solo healing Trell through that, which is just insane. And by the way, I don't know if anyone said, Trell's probably never going to watch this, but I did try and get in touch with you in case you didn't want people using clips from your channel, but you're apparently, I can't get a hold of you because you've got your Twitch DMs closed, and then you don't have a business email. So I would have had to just comment on a YouTube video. So unfortunately, I can't get in touch with you, but in future, if you don't want me to put stuff up, just let me know. But I thought that was a crazy clip that I saw on Twitch. But just to watch that again, the peak is just nuts. Like over 300k.
Yeah.
I didn't know Evoker could do this, to be fair.
It's because of the way that one of Evoker's talents work, I believe. I wish you would have hovered over it so we could see this to verify it. But one of the talents that they have means when they apply reversion, which is just a little hot, it heals them for 15% of the damage they've taken in like the last 8 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Trell's damage input here will be absolutely massive, so those heals will be huge.
Yeah, from TD plus Stagger, right? Then getting reversion, did you say, or rewind? I can't remember, but those combined are just absolutely carrying the damage here. It's carrying the healing. Yeah,
because rewind is like it's like 100% of the damage that you took in the last 8 seconds, or it might be 50. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so some nuts healing.
Yeah, it's a massive amount of damage smoothing, so he's still taking a lot of damage. It's just spread out a bit more. And the way that Evoker's healing works, it's just
perfect for that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an insane clip. All right, next up we've got ETR. So we have some dungeon timers, and the dungeons released for 10.1. Again, I assume you've had a quick look at this, right, from the Google Doc. And did you have any thoughts about timers or like what you want to see from 10.1?
Not specifically. I think just from doing the dungeons on M0, Older Man felt even longer than all of those dungeons. I think Older Man should get an over 40-minute timer, but I don't know by how much. I don't know if they should make it so it's like 43 minutes that you can try and comfortably get in 5 lusts, or if they just want to add an extra minute or two. Or maybe, I don't know, it's going to be really hard to tell until you actually do keys on PTR or on live. Because, I don't think they've done too much tuning yet. Brackenhide was such a bad dungeon on M0, and that's going to be such a bad dungeon in M+ until it gets like very
changes.
Vigorous tuning.
Yeah, I see that being similar to Knockout, where they're going to have to seriously look at what the actual ads do and the trash does, right? Because I mean, even then, there's bosses that are ridiculous in there, but there's a lot of trash, which is just it's insane what you'd have to do in there.
For sure.
Super happy to see Freehold and Underrock coming back. Some of my favorite dungeons of all time. In fact, I would put those two as probably in my top 5 dungeons. So awesome to see those coming back. Altharian's Lair, I dislike the amount of RP in there. The boss mechanic on, is it second boss with the statues, is annoying. But again, it's a pretty short dungeon timer, which I'm happy to see. I dislike that there's 4 dungeons in here with over 35-minute timers. I actually think what they should do with Alderman is get rid of a couple of bosses, which I don't know how they would do it, but almost turn it into like a mega dungeon. Do you know what I mean? And split it into 2 halves. Because it's too much. Like, add some extra trash in, make it like a 50-minute timer, and then split it in half or something, so it's 2 25s, or like a 24 and a 26. Because like long dungeons, because I agree, I think it's gonna have to be more than 40. I think it'll go to like 42 personally, but
which is really long.
It's so long, man. Like the amount of 40 minutes is like the edge of people's concentration normally, and then you need a break, and you're talking about having that for an entire dungeon. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's too long. Next up on PTR, we have tier sets. Did you watch my tier set video?
The tier list one, I had seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I was going to put you on the spot there. I was hoping you might have said that you hadn't, and then I was going to roast you, but
no, don't worry.
You actually, yeah. You're watching out for me, getting up those view numbers. So is there anything in here that's like jumped out to you in terms of tier sets? You're playing Demon Hunter in M+ right now, right? What do you think of that one?
I thought it was pretty lackluster. I'm not a massive fan of it. It's a lot better in single target, because on single target you just chain spend fury. You just press annihilate after annihilate. On AoE you still spend, but not as much. You spend more time generating fury because you have less of it, and it's just the way that Annihilate works, because it costs 40 Fury. I'm actually not sure what the chance is, but it very often refunds 20 Fury as well. So it technically only costs 20, but it'll have spent 40 towards the 2-piece.
Yeah, so you get more procs, right? Whereas you're not using Annihilate as much in AoE.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think it's pretty lackluster, but I think in comparison to a lot of sets, I think it's better than most, which is interesting.
In terms of strength or just like depth?
Strength mainly. It's not particularly deep, but not many of them are that deep in terms of. Well, when I say deep, as in like they're going to change the way that you play the game. I don't think there's many that really nail that.
Yeah, there's very few.
Yeah, I think they've missed the mark, I think, with changing the way that specs play. So I would love to, as a design philosophy, I think they've got it right. That season by season, the way that you play the game should change ever so slightly in like subtle ways, where maybe now you go and take these talent builds and you've got an ever so slightly opener or like rotation, whereas that actually doesn't change it at all, right? I don't think it does anyway. There's almost no way that changes the way that Havoc plays, and I'd say most of the sets are like that. It's just a set it and forget it. But I think in terms of power level and the way that it's going to function in game, I think that's better than a lot of others in here. Like I use an example of the Shadow Priest one. The Shadow Priest is a set it and forget it set again, but it just summons a Mindbender, which I think is pretty lackluster. I think it would be better to get, like, I think it's going to feel better to hit I-Beam, the Demon Hunter set, then you're not even going to notice that your 4-set procs as a Shadow Priest, if that makes sense.
Well, I noticed you saying this. I think that you've underestimated the Shadow Priest one quite a bit, especially in terms of gameplay, because if the tier set is good enough to make you play the Shadow Fiend build, then you actually will play around it. You'll extend this Shadow Fiend from 5 seconds to around 10, and you'll make sure that you're getting like 3 Mind Blasts and 2 Shadow Word Deaths in the window. But that's only if the set's actually good enough to make you play Shadow Fiend.
To make you play that. Yeah, I didn't know if it would be. That was the thing. I think you'd still have to play that Psychic Link and head over to Torrent side. But it could, you're right, it could. And I guess that's the thing, right, with a lot of these. If it's good enough, then it probably will change the way that you play. I think you're right there. Because again, what was the other one I was thinking of? Fire Mage. Did you look at that set? If I try and find that.
Yeah.
So Fire Mage one, the way that I read it is, so when your direct damage spells hit an enemy affected by Charring Embers, which is now applied by Phoenix Flames, gain hypothermia for 6 seconds. That to me makes it sound like you're going to have a really long hypothermia spell because Charring Embers is going to be a 10-second window. So you're basically going to have hypothermia with Charring Embers, but Ignite's not going to proc it because that's not a direct damage spell. Is the way that I read it, right? I think.
Yeah, if Ignite procced it, it would be disgustingly broken. You would be in hypothermia 100% of the time. So
Pretty much all the time.
There's no way it does.
Yeah, so it has to be something like Flame Strike. So you're going to have to weave Flame Strikes in, is what I've sort of taken it as, right?
Yeah.
I think. But then that means that I don't really know. I don't know how it's going to work.
I think it might proc off Flame Strikes, but I think that the tier as a whole is going to be capped to 1 stack per spell cast.
Because right, yeah.
If you're getting multiple stacks, like right now, you could cast Phoenix Flames enough that you would have Charring Embers on every target with 100% uptime. Okay. So I think if you have 6 targets, you're fighting 6 targets at that point. You would get into your first hypothermia proc, and then you would actually just press Flame Strike every GCD because you can do that in hypothermia, and you'd be getting 6 stacks every cast.
And you get more and more stacks off it.
Yeah, and you would be in hypothermia 100% of the time, or maybe you can't gain stacks while you're in hypothermia, but still, if that's the case, it's going to be unbelievably strong in AoE because you would get within hypothermia in like a few seconds or like 5 seconds if you flame strike in a lot of targets, and I think that will be like ridiculously strong.
See, I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to get 6 stacks per flame strike, and that's basically going to be that now you play flame strike builds rather than ignite spreading.
Yeah.
But that's not just like a little change to the way that you play, right? Like that'll be a huge way to a huge change to the way that you're playing. Because you don't play like that at the moment currently.
It won't be good really in any way. Like that playstyle is okay, but with the current talent system that you have, Fire's then going to become a class again where you either do AoE or single target.
Exactly.
You need to commit a lot of points to make the Flame Strike build work at the moment. And right now, you can literally go hit a single target dummy or 5 target dummies, and you will not change your talents at all, which... Yeah. I don't know if that much of an extreme is a good thing, but I like it. I prefer it being like that.
Well, if you look at all the specs that are strong right now, it's that philosophy that applies though, right? Like Havoc, you can do more single target if you take single target talents, but you're pretty much doing like 90% of your single target and all of your AoE in the same build. Like your rotation changes, of course, in AoE, but it's not that significant, right?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Same with Outlaw. Outlaws are set it and forget it. You just send in AoE. The only difference is whether you press Blade Fury, right? Sub Rogue, similar-ish AoE in single target sort of rotations. It's just the spenders that you're using and the builders. It's like I said, the talent system is there where if you get an increase in damage to eviscerate, it also applies to Black Powder. So you basically have the same set of talents almost for single target and AoE. And those are the specs that really shine. So if Fire's going in the other direction, I think it's going to make the spec function worse overall. It definitely will.
It will be worse, but like I said, I would be really surprised if it works that way, because I do think that Fire would then be brought, and you'd bring it with two more single target oriented classes, because Fire will do ridiculous amounts of AoE.
You can just sit there like as
it works like that.
Yeah, as a minigun of flame strikes.
Yeah,
hypothermia flame strikes. Yeah. It would be nuts. All right, cool. That sets then. Have you seen what they look like? Actually, I've got another link here. Have you looked at them?
For the visuals?
Yeah.
No, not really.
There's some in here which are so good. Have you seen the priest set? Just pull up the link in the doc.
Yeah. I was going to say I had actually seen a couple, because people in my guild were going crazy over the priest set.
It looks so good. Like, I want to play priest, man. DK looks good. This last row, actually, I think looks pretty good. Like, Paladin looks good. Rogue's a bit weird. Like, I feel like it's more monk than rogue. Warlock is decent. Mage actually looks really good as well. I don't know if you've seen that. I think Mage looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of any of the warrior one. Oh, I really don't like it. Shaman's sort of okay. Everything else I think is pretty missed, to be fair. I think the Mage, Warlock, Demon Hunter, Priest, and Paladins look sick. Like, I really want to make a Priest just for that set, because that set looks awesome. It looks so good.
I don't know, I think a lot of them look good. They're just not as on theme with the class. Like,
agreed.
I really think that the Druid one also looks really good, but it doesn't look particularly Druid-y other than the fact that it has leaves on it. But I think that looks like a pretty good set still.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't like the helmet that much for some reason.
I like it. I don't know. It just looks like some big ass demon, like the Balrog from Lord of the Rings or something like that.
You're right. It does look like a Balrog. That is a great reference. Yeah, the monk one. I just think the rogue one looks like a better monk set all around.
I honestly, I think like the entire time that monks have been in the game, they've gotten like two good looking sets.
Yes, it's true. I hate all of the monk transmogs. It's true.
Exactly the same as Demon Hunter right next to it. I think the majority of Demon Hunter ones just don't look good.
It makes me want to throw up a little bit.
Yeah, they can just never make. They're both almost always variations of a similar thing. Like, I've seen that monk set so many times in MOP, I feel like.
Yeah, agreed. It's so like on point, the fact that they just take the same formula and tweak it slightly, but the original formula was wrong, so they all felt wrong basically.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last things up then. We've got a couple of forum posts. So this is some random news where there was an interview with Ion, and basically it looks like we're going to get more classes which can play as evokers. Sorry, Draxia, not evokers. So it seems like they're going to be able to at least play with, I think they mentioned staves and swords or something. So that makes it sound like it'll be like Mage Rogue, for example. Is there anything that like you think would do really well with, because you get 2 AoE stops, right?
Yeah.
Anything that you see changing in terms of like M+ meta from it?
Not massively. Maybe just because they are actually really strong. Like knock-ups, for example. Yep. Knockbacks are the same thing. It's just really annoying spreading out the mobs unless you're knocking them back into a wall. But as far as stops go, having a stop that's off DR with everything else on a racial is really strong. Like maybe if a certain dungeon requires it, this goes back to the meta of Blood Elves in Legion, where you want like 3 or 4 evokers, and now you have 6 or 8 extra stops to a pull, and that just adds 15 seconds to the pull where mobs aren't doing things. And maybe it brings back like a mass pull meta, because an extra 15 seconds on a 30-second pull is huge.
It's huge. Exactly.
Could be the difference in killing the pull or not.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say I think it opens up the door for bigger pulls, because there's so many pulls where you just run out of stops because you go through beam plus 3 stuns, and then that's it. That's your timer, right? You've had that 20-second window, and now you're done. But if all of a sudden every single class is enhance and brings a knock up, then I think that's a big difference, right? Like if you've got like you just said, if you've got an extra 5 knockups and knockbacks in there, that's just insane. How much more control you've got. I don't know how much difference it's actually going to make in practice, but I think it could be really powerful for Mythic Plus. Like I'm interested in playing Rogue as an Evoker, just because I'm going to be a slightly squishier, right? Because I don't have Dark Iron Dwarf racial, but Iron Skin, is it? I can't remember. Stone Skin,
I think.
Yeah, Stone Skin. I don't have Stone Skin anymore, but that extra control is going to be really good. Like Rogue doesn't really have any AoE stops, so being able to weave that into the kit, I think it's going to be awesome.
Yep, agreed, definitely. I mean, I think it could be good, but I actually think that there are a lot of racials that are strong anyways. Like you said, Dwarf is good. Night Elf on healers specifically, but also on tanks for doing Nelf skips. And then just in general, Nelf is still really strong. I wouldn't switch off Blood Elf for our comp because I'm the only page that we have, and having an AoE page is really nice as well. But I think yeah, maybe if a certain dungeon requires it, or if individuals want to go it, that would make sense. I also think that like in MDI is where it could get interesting, because that's where if it's really good for a dungeon, then yeah, you'll have those 5 people go Evoker for that dungeon, and they have the freedom like to switch races on a per dungeon basis, right? I don't think you're going to see push teams ever be like, right,
no,
it's time to go Evoker because we've got this key, you know, like, and then they'll all go back to their normal races after that. But I do think it's a good.
I think you might see certain classes. So, for example, I don't think Shamans, it would make sense because you've already got a knockup. But something like Rogue, like I mentioned, it's probably going to be more favoured because all of a sudden you get that AoE stop into your kit, which you didn't have before. Like you can play Tauren, but it's not a knockup, right? And that knockup is actually really valuable. Yeah. Because it's not on DRs. Cool. All right. And then the last piece of forum. It's not drama. I don't know. It's sort of drama, but there's someone here who's posted stop cross-faction guilds. Some people may agree, some people may disagree, but I think cross-faction is a bad direction for WoW. So I'm not going to read much more because they just sort of talk about PvP, but I don't know. I'm so excited about cross-faction guilds and what it means for the game. Like I really like the fact that I can now play M+ with Horde and Alliance together.
Yeah.
I think as the sort of player base contracts, so clearly WoW is losing players over time. I think that's shown in numbers. It doesn't really matter though, because the world still feels pretty full. And I think if they can keep breaking down these barriers, then the world is still going to feel just as good. And then if it ever does see a resurgence, then the game's still better for it in my mind. Yeah, I don't think you need factions in place, right? I assume you're of the same like train of thought.
Yeah, I definitely am. I think it's just like an old system at this point. It's a bit archaic and it doesn't do anything. I think once they cross the bridge with allowing Horde and Alliance to raid Mythic Plus and PvP together, that this was going to be inevitable. And now that those systems are already in place, it's just going to be a positive for the game that Horde and Alliance can be in the same guild together.
Yeah, agreed. So this is like just random. I've just thought of this now, but I could have added it onto the Google Doc. But have you seen like hardcore servers and stuff? I think they were private servers originally, but I can't actually remember. But have you seen any of that stuff, like classic WoW?
I've seen a very small amount of it. Yeah, I've seen some like recent YouTube videos and stuff.
Okay, so there's if you've never really played RuneScape, have you? Did you play it a little bit? Did you know what like the wilderness is?
No.
Okay, so basically, right, there was like PvP zones, like areas in RuneScape. They've slowly made PvP worlds where like everyone can just attack everyone other than like safe spots. So say like an inn where you set your Hearthstone might be a safe spot, but then as soon as you step outside of it, you're flagged for PvP.
Yeah.
I think that would be super cool to have your character locked into that sort of world. So rather than just being hardcore, you can basically just die anywhere. And when you die, you drop your loot and like your gear. Now, I don't know how this would work, but I think that would be awesome to see in WoW, because obviously loot means so much in WoW. Like it's essentially the game, right? Like, and people would favor bank systems more, right? I don't know. It's just like this is where they could take something from another game. But if world PvPers want, just give them a server where they can just like go and play like that sort of game mode. Make it like really high stakes world PvP and make it more, I don't know, make it more like, make it better than the past, you know what I mean? Like improve on it. Don't just like say, oh, well, the old system was good, let's not move forwards with like the normal game. They could splinter something off that makes world PvP better in my mind. And I think that would satisfy a lot of these players much more.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't necessarily need to be as extreme as that, but also just you could have war mode be the same thing. Like war mode kind of it I don't know, it just doesn't make sense at the moment. Like I put war mode on here and there, but it's just for, you know, the war mode bonus and so that I can do a PvP world quest. Like I feel like I never run into people and actually world PvP. It's just
yeah,
it's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there must be a way of doing that to get world PvP back into the game without it affecting the normal run of playing the game. Like you don't have to force everyone to do it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Cool. Anyway, right, that's all that we had for this week. We'll try and do it slightly different next week so the episode comes out on Wednesdays. But yeah, I thank you for your time and coming along. I appreciate you helping me out here. Is there anything else you want to say?
Nope, all good. It's my pleasure. Happy to be here and thanks for having us.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much again. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Bye-bye.